Hey everybody, it's your favorite reconstructionist, Eric Brown and Phil Relly, and welcome to episode number 5 of the one and only show bringing you tips and tricks to working vehicle collision cases from the best experts in the industry every Wednesday. Today's topic is the liar for hire. So grab your expert angle coffee mug and settle in. 3, 2, 1, off we go. Every year, traffic crashes claim the lives of over 1 million people and account for over $500 billion of injuries around the world. A small select group of people, from police to attorneys to expert investigators, are tasked with getting justice for the victims, protecting the rights of involved parties, and ensuring the story is told accurately and honestly. Unfortunately, we believe that is an impossible task without the right team of experts. If you agree, then keep on listening for actionable tips from leading experts across various industries that you can start taking today to elevate your professional game. If you disagree, then tune in anyway and let us convince you with our ideas. We are Eric Brown and Phil Relly, and this is Crash Tech, the Expert Angle. Welcome back to the show, guys. Crash Tech, the Expert Angle podcast is brought to you by Crash Tech Reconstruction Services. If you have an accident that you need answers for, or you think the other side has it wrong, Crash Tech can help. Connect with us at www.crashtechreconstruction.com to submit your case for a free review. So Phil, today's episode, man, this is a hot button topic. This is the bane of your existence. So I'm guessing people are probably going to hear more from you in this episode than they ever have, because ethics is your
that like bleeps out in case I slip. Like
yeah, I can bleep stuff out. It's fine. I got it. But you know, this is it, man. This is one of those things, you know, like I said, you rank ethics as your number one core value. So I know this drives you crazy, but the liar for hire, when we're talking about expert witnesses, what are we talking about with the liar for hire?
That's just going to be that individual that will write the findings or the opinion based on what their client wants to hear, not based on what the evidence presents or manipulate evidence. You know, if for example, if you have drag factor testing for a certain surface that ranges from 0.7 to 0.8, they might bump it up to the highest end or even a little bit above 0.8 and find some singular study out there that doesn't represent the commonly used and accepted ranges in the industry, and use that because that gets what their client wants, the attorney. That's the opinion that attorney wants. So they have to find a way. They manipulate the investigation to arrive at the opinion that the attorney wants. And that
isn't that the point of an expert to get what the client wants out there?
Absolutely not. I think the truth is far more important.
The truth. You can't handle the truth. Come on, you knew that was coming.
Yeah, should have. But my thing is this though: if you're gonna wrap a case up and present it that it's because that's what your client wants is I want your opinion to be this, so you build your case around the opinion that you're trying to get to, then you're not building your case based around the evidence. And if you're not basing it around the evidence, get out of this industry. Go do something else.
Yeah.
Because you're discrediting all of the hard work that all the men and women in this industry that are doing it ethically and doing it correctly. Because at the end of the day, you got to sit there and defend that on the stand. You know, you've got to be able to defend the 5-gallon bucket of bull crap that you've typed up, and believe you me, that people will know who you are. And there's people that know if I want the opinion to be this, I'm going to call this company. That's really what you want your company to be known for,
right?
That I will type whatever you want me to type. You pay me the right amount of money, I'll type whatever you want. That is not me. I will not bend and hide from the truth. It is what it is. Accept it or run from it. That's your choice. I'm accepting it.
Now, interesting enough, and we've had this conversation before, right? Because you don't necessarily need to go to the liar for hire, right? Mm-mm. Because, and you and I have had this conversation on the police side, I think more than anything. But when it comes to a crash, agree or disagree with the statement that Pretty much in almost all cases, each party contributes to that crash.
Absolutely. Everybody brings something to it.
Yeah. Now, sometimes not. I mean, sometimes you end up with the guy that's just stopped at a stop bar waiting for a red light and just gets rear-ended, and all, his car worked perfectly. Everything was visible, broad daylight, no adverse atmospheric conditions, nothing like that. So there are
his mere
those
presence,
cases.
right? But his mere presence brought something to the crash. He was there.
Yeah. So, okay. So is there ever really a need to manipulate the science or the evidence, or is it more of just that you need to find that often overlooked piece of evidence that's the key to the case?
Evidence, or the overlooked evidence, or digging into your contributing circumstances. I mean, I don't know why people hide from this. The contributing circumstances side of crash causation. The cause of the crash is always should be the simplest thing to determine. Mm-hmm. Object A hit object B. That's your cause. Okay. Or the crash doesn't happen. These two things came together, tried to occupy the same place, same time. Doesn't work out usually very well. What was the contributing circumstance that brought both of those to that point? Yeah. And that in lies your opportunity to look for that hidden piece of evidence that's often overlooked. It's in the contributing circumstance.
Yeah. So, because when we say that and we say, okay, look, that you can manipulate the science, you can manipulate the evidence, and you absolutely can. Anybody that's been doing reconstruction long enough can. But every other reconstructionist that's going to review that, or an engineer, they should be able to catch that. Right.
And I mean, how many times have we done that? Looked at it and been like, holy cow, this is so far outside of the norm. It jumps off the paper at you. Right.
And it's like screaming in your face, like, holy smokes, like, what was this guy thinking?
And the sad part about it is the client, the attorney, paid a ridiculous amount of money for that.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I've never been able to wrap my mind around that concept of, I'll pay $10,000 to get a junk report that may or may not stand up to the scrutiny of a good cross counsel.
Right. But it's a bluff. So I paid $10,000 for a bluff. I mean, that's crazy. That's asinine in my mind. I mean,
it's just absolutely ridiculous in my opinion.
Yeah. So wouldn't the more fair thing to do, and you and I have done this before, where an attorney will call and they're going to say something, for the most part, they're going to be like, well, man, my guy pulled off from a stop sign and had the other guy been speeding, I think I could win my guy's case. Okay, fair enough. At least we know what they're looking for, but we dive into it and we're like, man, speed's not there. It's not. Period. End of story. Yeah. And so at that point, do you just give up, or at that point, do you start looking for something else? Because there's a reason. There is a reason that this crash happened.
Right.
Right.
Very rarely are you ever going to find a crash that occurred where the person got up that day or 10 minutes before the crash decided, you know what, I got nothing going on today. I'm bored out of my mind. I'm going to go have a crash.
Right. I mean, sometimes there might be that guy.
Right. There is. There's probably a whole nother bucket of reasons for that. But the point being, there's a reason these collisions occur. There's a reason that individual pulled from that stop sign. Is it that they didn't see the other car? Okay. Why didn't they see him?
Right.
And start digging into things like that. But oftentimes you find it's easier to get somebody to write what you want them to write so that you can present a document, have an expert, let's say, well, my expert is saying this, even though in your heart that is a piece of crap argument. It's a bluff. Right. What if they call your bluff?
Right.
You spent $10,000. I mean, if you've got that kind of money to waste, oh my gosh, email me and I'll get you an account and routing number you can just start depositing money into, because that's all it's good for. Give it to somebody that's going to use it for something.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, maybe the outcome isn't exactly what you were looking for. Maybe it's a whole different argument. Maybe,
but it's defendable.
Right. And that doesn't mean that you don't have somebody that you can still go after for the victim, because in a case like that, say you have a view obstruction of, right there at the intersection. Okay.
Sure.
Well, what's the view obstruction? And we just had this actually in one of the big cities. We had a case and there were overgrown trees that the city was responsible to maintain that were blocking the signage for the roadway.
Right.
So, okay, maybe it's not the other car's fault, but maybe you can go after the city of failure to maintain the trees, right? Maybe it's on private property actually. And we just had a case like that where it was a golf course that failed to maintain their tree, and their tree completely overgrew the stop sign, grew around it. And I mean, the stop sign was gone for all intents and purposes.
Well, and you just kind of laid out a point that I was going to try make later on if I got an opportunity to speak. But
I didn't mean to buffalo you there. Sorry.
But when you have two cars that collide in whatever shape or form, it's always easy if you're representing the individual operating vehicle one to go after the insurance and the individual of the vehicle number two. But what if the vehicle number two and operator of number two are really not the person you need to go after? What if it is the city? What if it is, the homeowner that has overgrown and it's blocking the intersection? Maybe it's a township or a county engineer's office or what have you. So, we're saying from a liar for hire stance that, you need your opinion, but maybe you're going after maybe you're looking at the wrong person. So maybe the needle in the haystack is also on your end as far as the person you're going after.
Yeah. Maybe the car malfunction. Maybe
there's more than one person.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting that you bring that up because 100% that we're not saying that you don't have a at fault party that you can go at, but maybe it's just not what you're seeing. And that's what a good expert can do, I think. And our responsibility as an expert is to bring that up, right? Not just to roll over and write opinions because you're paying us to write an opinion.
Right.
In my opinion, that makes for a crappy expert.
Well, and the thing is too is not only that dominoes effects through the industry, because then you start hearing, well, every crash reconstructionist is a liar for hire. No, it's not. You have crash reconstructionists and companies that are out there representing the field and the science behind what we do in an ethical and responsible way that's driving solid casework. And those individuals are absolutely fighting to disprove the liar for hire theory. But unfortunately, there's people out there that if you pay me enough money, I'll say and do whatever you want me to do. Well, if you want to hire a puppet, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's your money. But at the end of the day, it's your client that suffers in the long run. If that individual, is putting that out, eventually you're going to get an attorney or you're going to get, opposing counsel that's going to take them to task. And you may find yourself in a Daubert hearing and they get discredited. Now what you got? You got $10,000, no expert, no report.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so, I always point this out to a lot of attorneys. If the other side has an expert, so, especially for a PI attorney, if the insurance company gets an expert and they author a report, send that recon report to another firm and just ask them, hey, can you read this report? And does anything jump off the page at you as to maybe they weren't quite 100% ethical. They didn't follow the science, something like that. And for the most part, there may be some expert firms that charge for that. Like for us, I would never charge an attorney for that, just to read a report and let them know verbally, like, yeah, I think this guy really, really poo-pooed the bed, or.
And how many times does that happen?
Right.
We've got those reports and been like, oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah. And there's been some that we got and we're like, you know what? It sounds pretty solid.
Yeah.
Like, there's some points you could argue, but for the most part, it sounds pretty solid. Sure. And so, that's really where you need to align yourself is with a company that you can trust that has that reputation of not being a liar for hire. Right. And there's plenty of them out there. I mean, we're really good friends with a lot of these other company owners that are beyond reproach. I mean, they're impeccable, their ethics and standards and everything else. So choose any of them and just say, hey, look, take a look at this report and, let me know. Is this something that we could, that this guy went a little too far on, or does this sound good to you?
Right.
Yeah. And the problem is everybody knows these companies. Everybody knows the liar for hire company. We know them.
Yeah.
I get you have to know them. If you're an attorney, you have to know them. And if you've used them, this is kind of where you got to do some soul searching and be like, nah, yeah. Yeah, I might have called that guy because I needed an opinion, or I called that girl because I needed an opinion.
Right.
And I knew I could throw some money at them and they would say whatever I need them to say.
But the problem becomes, if it works once, you're going to try it a second time.
Yeah.
And then it works a second time, and then it becomes habit. Mm-hmm. I'm always going to go to that person because so far I'm 10 for 10 or whatever, but eventually you're going to get, and if you have any belief in Murphy's Law, when it happens, it's going to be the case of the case. It's going to be the case that you took that is huge liabilities. It's going to be a groundbreaking case. It's going to make all sorts of national news, and you're going to turn to that expert that you've turned to 100 times before because it always worked, and they're going to get stomped in the mud, and you are going to look like a fool.
Yeah. Well, I know that, but it's your reputation.
At the end of the day, absolutely it is.
And think about it, because if we know the liar for hires and you know them, then I guarantee the insurance companies know them.
Yeah.
I guarantee the judges know them.
It's our reputation on the line. If you become that person, you become known as that company. And then the attorney becomes known as that attorney that, I know if I hire this attorney, I guarantee he's going to get me money. Because the clients know that firm or that attorney has that reputation. Well, where did that attorney get that reputation from? They got that reputation by using a company that has that reputation. It's just it's just a toxic relationship, toxic environment. Sooner or later, it catches up. Yeah. Does it catch up to you on the $10,000 case, or does it catch up to you on the big, multi-million-dollar case that you think this is what puts me on the map? Oh, it'll put you on the map. Just not the map you probably want to be on.
And unfortunately, I think that's part of that term of where people came up with ambulance chasers.
Yeah.
And it's that attorney that's just going out there, filing every lawsuit, getting a reconstructionist or an engineer, pays them for an opinion, and it's all based on junk science. And again, I think that's where that term starts to come from, is junk science. Yeah. Is because these guys are going out there and they're just writing these opinions. And they author them out there, and everybody knows it's baloney. Everybody knows it,
right?
And so
if they do it, the expert does it 100 times and gets their client, the attorney, a settlement 100 times. They kind of believe they start believing the garbage they're putting out there.
Yeah, and so I mean, is that the attorney that you want to be? Like, is that and maybe it is. That's fine. I mean, I guess if that's your wheelhouse, then at least you know your target audience and you know what you're here for. But if you don't want to be that attorney, don't be that attorney.
Yeah, it's a choice. It's not a
because I'm telling you, you can win these cases. It just might not be on the path that you think that you're currently on. That's all. Maybe you just need a fresh perspective. And so if you bring in an honest expert, that's what they're offering you, is a fresh perspective.
Isn't that the expectation of the expert, though? When you think about an expert, even growing up as a kid and you hear the word expert, you think of the person that is trained, in their field of or area of expertise, and they know that area of expertise. They're going to practice ethically, and everything is going to be sound. It's going to be solid. It's going to be repeatable, all that stuff that goes into it. And if you're using someone that's not doing that, someone that is just writing what you want them to write so that you can be able to present a document that said, this came from my expert. Are they really an expert? I mean, save yourself the $10,000 and just hire somebody and put them in an office somewhere, and clerical staff, pay them $15 an hour, and
yeah, right.
have some college intern down the hallway typing up opinions.
Yeah, and so I think part of this also goes back to one of our first episodes of the differences between some of these experts. And so would you not agree that I think one of the things that perpetuates this cycle is that you have some experts out there that don't know how to locate this crucial evidence. This is where locating the evidence becomes absolutely paramount, because if you can't locate the evidence, then really all you're relying on is what the police officer did, which we've discussed may or may not be accurate. Right. And you know the ending conclusion that the attorney wants you to come to. And so that expert is going to rely on that garbage in, garbage out. And he's going to have to make it fit whatever narrative he needs to make it fit. Whereas if you hire an expert that really they're top notch at locating evidence and knowing where to turn to, knowing what resources they need to turn to, and have a good working understanding of this, they can sit there and be like, you know what? Listen, I know you want to go after speed. I don't think that's the smart approach here. I know you want to go after visibility. I don't know that necessarily is the right approach. Right. But they should be able to, your expert should be able to offer you the correct approach.
Yeah, they should be able to see based on the evidence and the correct interpretation of the evidence. If this is the path you want to travel, that's fine. We'll start down that path and see where it leads us. But eventually you're going to come to a fork in the road. One leads to additional evidence to help support your original path. Well, there's no more evidence. It's blocked off. There's a roadblock. Got to start down another path.
The other path leads to bum, certain death.
Yeah. But that's what I would think that is what every attorney would expect their expert to do. I mean, isn't it at the end of the day, isn't that what you should be hiring them to do, is locate the evidence and locate, and bring to you. I mean, if you establish the right relationship with the right expert, with the right company, and you trust that, okay, that this is what I thought we had in this case because my client believed that other person was speeding, and that turns out to not be the case, that if your expert comes to you and says, look, speed's just not there. However, we got a huge visibility problem. Okay. Be willing to change, be willing to change paths and go down that path with your expert. Because at the end of the day, you should be trusting your expert is going to give you, just like when you go to the doctor and you're not feeling well, you're trusting the doctor is going to give you the correct diagnosis. Your expert, in a sense, is the doctor of this crash reconstruction field.
Yeah.
And they should be offering you the right opinion or the right diagnosis for what your situation is. And if you don't trust that and you want to stick to your guns of this is what you want, I think back to your comment, I think that's where you got to do some soul searching. You either trust your expert or you don't.
Yeah. And I equate the attorneys that go after this, just using the quote unquote, the hired gun, the liar for hire. Those are the same people that go into the mechanic shop and they're like, well, this is what's wrong with my car. Fix it. Yeah. Or they go to the doctor and they're like, I have strep, doc. I need some meds, and if you go to a good doctor, to a reputable doctor, he's not just going to take your word on it because you looked it up on WebMD, right? Because everything on WebMD,
all doctors now.
Yeah. WebMD is whatever, like 4 different solutions and cancer, right? Like you're like, I have a headache. And they're like, well, you could just you could be dehydrated or you have brain cancer. That's just WebMD. But that's exactly it. Is any good doctor worth their salt, an expert in their field, is going to want to do their own diagnosis. And it's the exact same thing with a mechanic. You take your car in there and you're like, man, this thing's idling rough, the wheel sounds weird. And they're going to want to do their own diagnosis. You know what? I appreciate your opinion. I appreciate where you think the problem's coming from. Let me do my own diagnosis. I'm going to call you back, tell you how we're actually going to fix it. Well, it's got to be the same thing with your expert.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the big things of why we have our initial consult. Is anybody that's done work with us before knows the way that we work. Okay, is send us everything you got, reports, photographs, any kind of statements, things like that. I don't want to know who your client is. Do not on the first contact, never tell me who your client is. And we do this with the insurance companies too. When we work their cases, I don't want to know, white out on the report what insurance company each person has, because I don't want to know. I want it to be a complete surprise. And let us review it.
Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Yeah,
because the evidence should be the evidence.
Mm-hmm.
And that's stuff that you can't manipulate because, man, I'm telling you, just like Phil said, you go down that road, that's a scary slope. And unfortunately, and we had this conversation the other day, your experts have that temptation, right? Because once you've been doing this long enough and you really start diving in and knowing where the formulas come from and how to derive them, you learn how to manipulate them. And that's a scary, scary, dark road to go down. And this is why ethics becomes so important. You have to find that ethical expert that's not going to cheat.
Well, and something else, and kind of thinking about it as you were talking there, let's say you have the case where.
You mean you weren't paying attention? Shocker.
I was paying attention.
Oh, okay.
But you have that case where you believe speed is a factor, and you give everything to your expert, and they're reviewing it. But I don't think and that's where I think ethics come in, and from the stance of, okay, I've come up with speed. Yes, speed is certainly, part of this. Yes, speed definitely played a role in this. What role? Yeah. You don't just stop, because you're going to have that. You're going to have that expert that, you believe you have a speed. And sometimes there's cases where there's no doubt it's a speed related issue. Everybody would see it. Then if everybody's going to see it, you got to see where that plays the role. How does that impact everything else as a result of this, the cascading effect of it? But when you have that quote unquote liar for hire that just says, yep, you're right, we had speed. Speed was the significant contributing factor in the crash, or was the cause of the crash. Okay. It was the cause or contributing circumstance. So you got to get that right partnership where you have that expert that says, here's the evidence, and you are correct. Speed did play a role. This is the role it played. That's willing to go that step further. And that's kind of what you owe as an expert.
Well, and so that's actually a future episode coming up, is cause versus fault. Because I think a lot of people are very unclear on the difference. And there is a distinct difference between the cause of a crash and who's at fault for the crash.
Yep.
And we're going to do a whole episode on that because it actually starts to get kind of murky, but that's where the expert needs to really clarify that. And sometimes that's what you're seeing when you are just paying somebody for an opinion, is they'll just stop at cause, but not go on to who's at fault, or they'll do who's at fault without analyzing the cause. Right. And you got to be careful, because you get another expert
have both sides of that
worth their salt.
And you got to answer both sides of that, cause and fault.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. And if they're not, you run the risk of getting buried in court if you get a good expert on the opposing side that knows the difference, because he's going to take a look at that and be like, well, yeah, that was a cause of the crash, but here's why, that guy's at fault, not my client. And if your expert didn't do that, the jury's going to believe the guy who did, that went the one step further.
Yeah.
So you really got to be cognizant of that, and make sure that you're watching that. Make sure that you're hiring the right guy for the job that goes that necessary step. And, where this becomes a problem, for a practical example, everybody in our company hated this case, every single one, because once we get a case in, I'll present it around to my other reconstructionists, and we all, and I'm like, well, this is the road I think I'm going to go down. And then they all kick it back. And so we had one that was going to be a visibility case. And it involved a dump truck that was bright yellow, middle of the day, clearly visible for like 1,000 feet, and everything else. And so I'm like, I think, let's go down, the visibility path. And everybody's like, dude, you ain't got it. Like there's not a visibility problem there, and you try and find a way to make it a visibility problem, because that's what your instincts are inclined to do. And so you've got to be willing to step back when your other experts that you're collaborating with are like, dude, you don't have it. You have to come off that pride. And I think that's another thing that drives this liar for hire mentality, is pride.
Yep.
And you've got to be willing to back down. And like in that case, I'm like, okay, well, let me come off of that. Then what else do we have? And so, everybody starts kind of kicking it out there. You're like, oh man, that's actually a way better road to go down. And so once we did that and we went down some of the paths that the other guys that weren't wrapped up in the case saw, it became such a better case. And so, that's it, is sometimes you need that fresh perspective. And I kind of, for the example on that, think about it. There's a reason that the players on the field of a football game, I'm an Ohio State super freak, so I'm going to use Ohio State. Right. Even though I believe our players are good enough that they don't need a coach, right? They could just go out and beat everybody in the country anyway. There's a reason they have a coach, right? Because the players on the field are so into the game. Their concentration is just so wrapped up in the game, they can't see it. They can't see the defensive player starting to move for the blitz. They can't see, all the what's going on the field. And so you have the coach that's over on the side that's calling the plays. And then beyond that, right, the coach is super wrapped up in the game. He's watching what his players are doing, watching what the other team's doing. So now, where's your actual play caller at? He's up in the skybox. He's not even with the team, right? Because he has that fresh perspective. Right. And that's where it comes down to is you guys as the attorneys are so vested in these cases. You have so much wrapped up into them, and you've spent hours away from your families. You've got thousands of dollars resting on the line here. You've gotten to know the clients and everything else. And when you call that expert, the expert has to be the play caller. He's got to be, and I don't mean that like on the way he's got to tell you how to litigate the case, but he has to be the fresh perspective.
Right.
He has to be able to see the whole field, everything that's going on, and be able to make some calls.
He's got to see the game.
Yeah, 100%.
And the game is 100%. It's the whole pie. It's not half of the pie and then issue an opinion, because that if I do the whole pie, I can't issue the opinion that you're looking for. But if I do half of the pie, I can get you your opinion.
Yep. And then, and again, we're going to do a whole show on peer review, but just make sure too, when they're doing their peer review process, I would ask your expert, what is your peer review process? Because like,
I tell you what, this is probably one of the things, or one of the areas that you and I, outside of a couple other minor topics, but you and I really, with our group of reconstructionists, we're brutal.
We are. Yeah.
I mean, we are 100%. Just brutal. Because if I read your report and it doesn't convince me,
right,
you ain't convincing a jury,
or you poke holes in it, and that's it. Is we actively try and destroy that report. I mean, like if Phil submits a report to me, it's not just a proofread. You know what I mean? And so if you ask your expert, well, what's your peer review process? If they're like, well, we proofread it and look for mistakes and this, that, and that, you know what? That's why Microsoft Word has a review tab. Like that's not what a peer review is. Like right. I'm going to look at it from I'm working for the other side, and I'm going to bring my A game. I may even do a whole nother reconstruction on it. I mean, there's been times Phil will do his own diagrams, his own everything, and we'll go animation for animation, animate the crashes out, go back and forth and poke holes in each other's arguments, because at the end of the day, you want to make sure that what you're doing holds up to the science.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And is true to the facts. And if your expert can't win on the facts, if he has to actually manipulate the science, manipulate formulas, if he has to do that crap, stop using him, because he's the one that's doing a disservice to everybody in this field, including you as the attorney.
Absolutely.
Because the judge knows it. And when the other side makes their objections are going to be sustained and yours are going to get denied. Yeah. Right? The judge can see it. The jury is going to see it. Everybody's going to see it.
And I don't know if it's just because of what we, have done, or the fields that we're in our full-time lives is what drives that ethical approach. I would hope not. I would hope that is who you are as a core, as a human, as a person. But it's sad when you see some of these reports coming out there that an attorney presents to us, says, hey, this is what the other counsel's expert report is, and you look at it and you're just like, so it's so disappointing to see that's where some people are willing to take that's where they want to take their name and their company's name. That's the path they want to go. And I won't do it.
Right.
I just absolutely not.
Yeah. If you want,
I would rather lose knowing that I did everything right.
Yes.
Everything right. It was ethical. The analyzation was fine. And you're just stuck with, with what the jury decided. Then lose because, I got to look at myself in the mirror the next day and lose because, I knew I should have never went down that route, but I went there because that's the only way I could have got to the opinion that they wanted.
Yeah. And I mean, if you get part of your report excluded or suppressed or something, I mean, man, you're no help to anybody ever again.
Yeah.
That's always going to come back to haunt you. So yeah, I agree. If your expert can't win it on the truth, they're a crappy expert. I'm just going to be flat out blunt honest. If they can't,
it is what it is.
They shouldn't be an expert. So, so Phil, we're up against our time limit. Final thoughts, man.
I think you go after the truth. At the end of the day, I think that's what we're all after. Stick to that.
Yeah.
Don't go down. Don't be tempted to go down the path of least resistance.
Yeah. And I think on that, I'm going to echo that with don't let pride get in the way of doing what's right. Don't let pride get in the way.
I agree 100%.
That's right. So,
yep.
Well, everyone, that's going to wrap it up for the day. As always, jump over to Facebook and make sure you follow and join Crash Tech, the Expert Angle group. Also, if you want to leave us feedback, have an idea for a show, or would like to be on a future show, head over to crashtechangle.podbean.com and click the link on the right that says contact the show. The form will come up. Put anything that you want right in there. If you want more information on expert consulting services or training, visit us online at www.crashtechreconstruction.com. And finally, if you're a PI attorney, make sure you request to join the Crash Site Facebook group. Or if you're a defense attorney, make sure you request to join the Crash Site Defense Facebook group. Neither site contains any ads or spam. It's just a private community that brings experts from all different areas together with attorneys to collaborate or ask questions. So again, guys, thanks for tuning in. And remember, always leave your accident victims better off than you found them, because at the end of the day, everything we're doing is for them.